TopMedTalk.
Welcome back to day 2 of Anesthesiology 2021, the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. I'm Desiree Chappell, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Professor Monty Mythen, Professor of Anesthesia and Critical Care at University College London, and Editor-in-Chief of TopMedTalk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Desiree. Desiree, second half of day 2, and still feeling great.
We are feeling great.
Everyone's
I think it's just
so happy to be here.
Yeah, I think that's what's getting us through on on all of it. And Professor Sol Aronson.
Good to be here, Professor Sir.
Oh,
someday. No, we're getting giddy in the afternoon of day 2, but it is so fun to be here, to get giddy in person with people.
It is. We're coming to you live from the exhibit hall here in sunny San Diego, and I heard that it's sunny out there.
It is.
I think it is.
Beautiful.
It is. Well, we are having amazing conversations with members of the ASA, committee members of the ASA, some of the presenters here over the course of the weekend, and this afternoon is no different. An amazing woman in anesthesiology, Dr. Stephanie Byerly. It's so wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, TopMedTalk, we talk a lot about perioperative medicine, everything that is in the space of perioperative medicine. And I think talking about women in anesthesiology and that topic is something that we would love to discuss on TopMedTalk. So I'm glad that you're here.
Thank
now,
you.
Stephanie, for a lot of our viewers and listeners, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm a professor of anesthesiology at UT Southwestern in Dallas, and I'm also the head of OB anesthesia at Clements University Hospital. And I've been there for 23 years and have gotten some amazing opportunities for major leadership roles, which has been wonderful. And then I became chair of the Committee on Women Anesthesiologists a year ago.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Now, is that a committee that's actually been formed for a while, or is that something that's kind of new to the ASA?
So Dr. Linda Hertzberg, who is a trailblazer in anesthesia and women, she ran the ad hoc committee for several years, and then it became a full committee last October.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the committee and the mission of the work that you guys are doing.
So this year, actually, it's amazing. We have one of the largest committees in the ASA. We had some of the largest amount of women actually apply to the committee. So I had to ask to have the committee be larger than normal.
Wow.
And we didn't want to miss any wonderful people that wanted to get involved. And so we have some amazing women. Our mission is to make things better for women anesthesiologists. Mm-hmm. And this year has really exploded what the committee has done because of COVID. Yes. And the things that we've been able to put forth through the ASA, mostly my committee and the Committee on Physician Wellbeing. There was another ad hoc committee formed, and we have come up with 4 documents having to do with changes that need to go into effect for scheduling, for caregiving options, for promotion and tenure, and for mental health issues.
Fantastic. Well,
yes.
We're going to get into like the DEI and some of those things here in just a minute. But talk to us about, why do we need this committee on women in anesthesiology?
So currently there's decreasing numbers of women going into anesthesia, and we know that women add so much with diversity, and not just women who look the same. We need women of all different colors to be a part of it, because we know in the business world that women save companies when they come in because of the diversity they bring, and it's the same in medicine. And being an anesthesiologist, we're perioperative physicians, and women lead teams. I hate to say this, but
no offense to our men here.
in better ways than men lead teams, and we very much push other people up, sometimes at our own expense. But
true.
We're very good at negotiating for other people. We're very good at communication, and we navigate situations well. Yeah. And so women are key to be in leadership roles and bringing the diversity, because when there's women that are leading other women, those women will bring the other women up. And so they know that in women physicians, when they go to residency programs of all specialties where there's strong women that will bring them up, that it makes a huge difference. Yeah. And so one of the things that's really a problem for women is they get over-mentored and under-sponsored. Do you know the difference between?
No.
I would. Thank you. Please elaborate.
So mentorship is when someone who usually reminds the mentor of themselves sort of advises you about your career. But for women, it's usually about your personal life. Men get sponsored more often, and sponsorship is when someone that's above you who can get opportunities for you will say, hey, I know this person, they're great, give them an interview, or they would be great for this role. Women barely are sponsored, so they're over mentored about their personal life, and men are sponsored and men are promoted on potential. So, he has the potential to do well, when women have to prove themselves over and over and over again.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to dive deep into this, but before we do, I want to go back to something you just said, because I really want to understand better. You said that there are fewer and fewer women going into the specialty of anesthesiology. That was a moment of just pause for me. Can you speak to that as best you can as to what you believe is caused?
I think part of it is the exposure that medical students get during medical school, and if they have the ability to do an anesthesia rotation, and if they're strong women that they meet when they're on those rotations. And so to be honest, I'm very fortunate because I've been at UT for so long, so a lot of people get referred to me just to shadow because they may be interested in anesthesia, and it's usually women that come to me, and so I will do everything I can to have them, go to the operating room and have great experiences. So there needs to be more exposure. And so our committee, what we're actually doing is we're going to be starting, and actually after the ASA, we have queried the anesthesia interest groups around the country, and actually some international, and we're going to have women from our committee who are going to meet virtually with these anesthesia interest groups so that people can talk live to women anesthesiologists and ask questions, because they really worry about work-life balance and what it's like being an anesthesiologist, and can I also have a life and work.
Stephanie, can you go one stage back from that? Are there fewer women going into medicine? Because it's not like that in the UK.
No, it's just in anesthesia specifically. Yeah.
That's really what it's. Well, what are some of the unique challenges that are being presented? I mean, you mentioned family responsibilities and things like that, but I mean, there has to be something else that are motivating, people not to go into it.
I'm not sure that we actually know all the reasons, but again, I think it's what they see in medical school, and the amount of exposure that they get to it, because it is, it does attract, I think, a different type of person, and so again, I think it's what you end up seeing in your experience.
Yeah. Is there anything specific to women anesthesiologists that really make the job, more difficult or more challenging, do you think?
I think, if I'm going to be honest, I think that the operating room can be a hostile work environment sometimes. And I think that anesthesiologists sometimes can learn to function in that and still protect the patient, because ultimately we navigate so many social situations in the operating room. We try to keep the peace. And I think for some women, you're still treated differently as an anesthesiologist in general, but certainly women anesthesiologists get treated differently. And there's some recent literature to show that women anesthesiologists are the most discriminated against physicians, because we're oftentimes treated as second-class physicians, like the surgeon is more important. And I think for women that can be amplified. And when you're dealing, I don't know if you want to get into this stuff on this podcast, but when you're dealing, sometimes with situations that are male-dominated professions, sexual harassment is alive and well, and getting called by your first name and getting called a nurse, and yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. What about, we hear a lot about pay gaps and things like that. Is that something that exists in our...
Yep, and so actually there was a paper that just came out in anesthesia and analgesia a couple of months ago that I will say Dr. Hertzberg and a whole team of people were working on for 3 years. And it actually showed that, and after correcting for years of experience, hours worked, where you live, there's a $32,000 pay gap on average between male and female anesthesiologists.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And if you think about that over a career, that's $1 million. That's not even considering interest and how much it would grow over a 30-year career.
Is that something that surprises you guys?
It's so, as Stephanie said at the beginning, I'm from the UK. I used to work at Duke back in the day, but I've been back in the UK for about 20 years. And I sort of remember the world you're describing, but I don't live in it anymore. So that hostile environment's not tolerated. Lack of gender opportunity, certainly in the hospitals and the university, is absolutely not tolerated. So I just wonder if it's sort of a passage of time thing, or I know it needs fixing, but you just have to share with you, I don't live in that world anymore. I did, if you see what I mean, which makes me believe it can be fixed.
It can be, but I think there's so many things. So if we talk about promotion, women get promoted less. Women are less deans. Women have less papers published, less grants that are accepted. I mean, there's just so many things that happen. And so I think it has to be the responsibility of where you are to want to address those issues. But I'll be honest with you, when I was vice chair when I was an ad hoc committee, I queried every component society, anesthesia society in the country to see what efforts they had for women. A couple of people got on the phone with me and said, why would there be a problem with women? Like, is there some discrimination against women? And I was like, oh my goodness, like, people don't even know.
Were those men or women who you were talking to?
I was talking to men.
So I just don't get called out for being an old white guy. I absolutely, definitely did live in that world.
Yeah.
And it absolutely did need fixing. And I'm not saying it's completely fixed, but it's very different to as you described. So what we did in the UK and the efforts that were made makes me believe that it is all fixable, which is great if you see it from that perspective. But now the question is, how do you get on and fix it?
I think awareness is the biggest thing. And I know, the ASA actually, with this DEI stuff that we're doing, because I've been involved in that whole process.
Can you help us understand what DEI is?
Yes, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which basically is like equal opportunities for everybody. Yeah. And so the ASA is very serious about making sure for the membership that, that we are giving people the opportunity. So I've been involved in picking the firm that we actually was hired by the ASA to do this big study that they're doing, and actively involved in that. It's going to be a process.
Yeah. So just to speak to Monty's point and engage further, I appreciate that there were rules, if you were. It was regulated to ensure that a department or an organization wouldn't receive any kind of external funding unless they met certain threshold metrics for diversity. And so they quickly responded because of the economic. But did it fix it? I challenge, and I wish for you to weigh in on that, because I think we still have a long way to go. There's an implicit bias that is under the surface always, and I don't think we're that mature yet.
There's a long way to go.
Right.
So I don't want anyone to misinterpret my conclusion. There's a long way to go, but I think from what you're describing currently, and something I remember, the fact that I think in the UK, certainly from the university perspective and the National Health Service perspective, we've come a long way. Gives me hope.
Yes.
And we have to keep going is the important thing. We have to keep going.
Right, we have to keep going. And I think, again, it's awareness. And so if I would talk to a colleague and explain this to them, they would be like, really? Are you sure? And then, this actually happened at work. And then someone came up and called me by my first name. And they looked at me and they were like, oh my God, if you would not have just explained all this to me, I wouldn't have even thought that was odd.
Sorry, Dr. Byerly.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kind of freaking out now.
I don't understand the first name thing. We all call each other by first name where I work, so irrespective of who you are.
So
I do not get called Professor Mythen. They call me Monty.
So, I've had some conversations with nurses who will call me by my first name instead of Dr. Byerly, and I would ask them, would you ever call my male colleague by their first name? And they look at you and they're like, no, and I'm sorry. But that happens all the time.
But first name for everyone makes that easy.
Right, but that's not what we do here.
There's a good target.
Yeah.
Well, but you're setting a standard, and you're expecting that standard to be met universally, whatever that standard is, whatever that standard is. I get it.
Unless I say to you, yes, please call me by my first name, So
may I?
Yeah, please.
learned why there is this sort of diminution of entry into the specialty. I would presume because of COVID, there's a accentuated exit from the specialty on the other end of this conversation.
Yes, absolutely, and not just anesthesia, but women in medicine leaving in droves for multiple reasons. And, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they actually were fired more than men. They were furloughed more than men. Oh, yes. And they got bigger.
Did my expression reveal?
And they
shocked?
also got bigger pay cuts than men, and they also got asked to take on new clinical responsibilities more than men, that they were put in situations they had not been in before clinically. Oh, this is going to be a great conversation.
So sorry, is my mouth open? Because
yes, and it should be open.
It should be open.
Yeah.
My goodness, I must confess, I thought you were going to say yes because of other duties that they were being torn away from.
But too.
But to learn what you just told me is something I did not know nor appreciate.
Yes, definitely, though part of it was new responsibilities like caregiving for their children, or elderly parents who say nursing homes closed or assisted living and they had to move in with them. That was definitely a part of it, yeah. And that's why we wrote these 4 documents, so that women that were going to come back into the workforce would not be penalized for having had taken time off for different reasons and lost, because women, here's another thing that has happened, women's academic productivity in academics has drastically dropped, where for men it's actually gone up.
And this is irrespective of the COVID?
During COVID.
Okay, during COVID.
Yep,
during COVID.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow, that's crazy statistics.
So the AMWA, which is the American Medical Women's Association, you might have been seeing some people walk around with masks that say don't let her leave medicine, basically, or keep her and give her a reason to stay, I think is what it said. They sent out some paperwork, and I think they said that COVID has set women back 25 years in medicine.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. So the committee, specifically, what are you guys doing to address kind of each one of these things? So
with the paper that got published about the pay gap, this has started conversations in individual departments and within the ASA. We also, these documents that we got approved through the ASA, they're on the ASA Physician Wellbeing website.
Okay.
And so there's actually practical solutions in these documents. So it isn't just like, oh, you should do this. There's actually, things to do. And I actually just got something that we're getting approved this weekend, I hope, about coaching for physicians as a way for system change to help with burnout. And so that's a separate thing that we are working on as well.
One thing I really find interesting, because I follow a lot of women in leadership in general, on social media and accounts and things like that. And, it's a lot of women for women, which is absolutely 100% fantastic. I mean, that's what we need to do to, again, what you said, lift each other up. What I feel like we fail, not fail, but I feel like sometimes we miss the other side of the coin is how do we educate our male colleagues?
Absolutely.
Because just not understanding that there's even you don't even know that there's a problem. And then how do you make it where it's not how do you present all this information?
Yeah, and it is that it's not a blame game, but it's like we need your help, and that's what it is. And so to have educational modules on implicit bias and the things that women face, because I think most men just don't even realize it. But here's the thing: women do it to other women as well.
Yeah.
So it isn't just men to women, and certainly women of color face additional discrimination. And yes, and they lost more jobs than women, white women, and so that's a whole nother piece to this that's critical. But it's the education piece, because it's the same for if you look at people of color applying to medical school. So we have someone that was hired at our university, Dr. Quinn Capers, and he explained all this to me, and it was fascinating, that in Ohio, when he got there, they had a very uniform group of medical students that looked pretty much the same. When he introduced implicit black-white bias testing, and the admissions committee took the tests, and they realized how biased they were, the next year they had the most diverse group of medical students that they've ever had. And here's the thing, we need people to look like the patients, because populations are discriminated against in medicine, and they need to be taken care of by doctors who look like them.
Yeah.
And so if we don't get a diverse workforce, our patients are suffering.
One of the things that you and I were talking about before we went live, and I had one of those aha moments, is you were teaching me that there are men on the ASA committee for women anesthesiologists.
Yes.
Just share your, speak further on that, if you will.
So they are very much proponents of women being treated equally, and so that's why they actually want to be on the committee, because they want to be able to spread the word and they want to help with these initiatives, which is just refreshing. But they come to the committee too not knowing all of the issues that women face, and they're literally they're just
floored.
like enlightened. They are floored because and one of the great things too is then they're like, oh my gosh, I have a daughter or my wife or
That's exactly
this.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and then they find it, they're like, oh my gosh, I need to learn more about this for like my family, and because people just don't know. It's not a malicious thing most of the time. It's really unconscious.
I think I have 2 boys, an 8-year-old and 10-year-old, and they see me work, and it's never been something that I put in front of them, but it makes me think about I don't have daughters, but boy, I want my children, I want my boys to know this. How do we make it better?
So Stephanie, if I may,
Yes.
How do you feel about, because I told you before we sat down about Athena Swan, which was the system that was introduced in the United Kingdom to try and help to address some of these issues. But if you stand back from it, it's a positive discrimination program. And how do you feel about having a structured positive discrimination program?
I think that it would be, if people could feel like they were being treated equally, that they would be happy about that. Because in all walks of life, women are paid less. And so if a man does this job and a woman does this job and you get paid the same, I think people would be very excited.
And that was the core of it, was that's how you were tested as a department or as a university or whatever it is, to get various different gradings. And what we learned, because the first thing was to train particularly us men and women who couldn't see it, because it's not necessarily just the men who can't see it, depends on the female, is at the end of the way it played out is the fact that if you're faced with making a promotion or giving an appointment, if people are scoring equally, the woman always gets it, if you see what I mean. So it's not that the woman gets it because they're a woman.
Gotcha.
If you're getting to a difficult decision, the woman always gets it, and that's evened things up. Not completely, but it's gone a long way to evening things up. And there's no pay discrimination.
That's amazing.
Sorry, I have to qualify. There is pay discrimination in our country, no doubt. But from the point of view of the way it works within the hospital university environment, that you're not allowed to have pay discrimination on gender.
It's amazing.
So the DEI initiatives that are coming out of the ASA, walk us through some of the things that are maybe specific to some of these topics.
So they've met with several committees, and my committee was one of them. They basically asked, structured questions, but what is wrong? What do we need to do in the ASA? We want more members. We want to retain members. We want people to get more involved. And so my committee was frankly very honest with them. And I think a lot of the committees were, because they really do want to see the ASA be successful and have more people join. I think, there's a decrease in ASA membership too, which is, they're trying to address that. And so we're trying to say to people, what would make this better? What would you like to know? Because a lot of people don't know how the ASA works. It's a complicated organization, so even things like, how do I get on a committee? So to make things more transparent. And so we interviewed several firms. It was a long process, and with the firm we picked, we think they're doing a great job. But it is going to be a long process, and they're in the process now of surveying members after they've done in-person interviews, and then they're going to kind of tell us what needs to be fixed at all levels of the organization, and we'll go from there. Yes.
So when it comes to the committees, are they trying to ensure that each committee has the same number of men and women and things like that? Is that something you're looking at?
I think they're just querying the committees to find out what they think needs to be fixed.
So we're at the very, very initial steps of all of it.
Initial steps, right. But it was a varying group of committees. I know the committee on physician well-being, and then the committee on, I think it was professional diversity, diversity. So a lot of the key committees that are working on similar initiatives.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, Stephanie, if I know now I'm like,
do we all have permission?
We do.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing too. On EBPOM, we do actually call everyone by their first
perfectly
name.
fine. That's perfectly
fine. Just as we wrap up here, first of all, where do we get resources to find out more about the initiatives that you're working on in these papers? Do we have exact links? Can we put those in there?
Our committee, the Women's Committee we have our own online site, and a lot of the stuff we did, the initiatives, was through actually the committee. It's listed actually on the Physician Wellbeing website on the ASA, and there's 4 documents there. Actually, Wednesday, one of our documents, it's called Creating a Culture of Well-Being within the ASA, is going to go up to the House of Delegates on Wednesday and hopefully get approved. And it's a very comprehensive document that talks about the 4 documents we wrote, but really talking about mental health for physicians, destigmatizing, getting mental health care, and very much in detail. So we're hoping that's going to get passed. We think it's going to do well.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm sure on social media there's all kinds of movements. Are you on there or other colleagues?
Not on specifics for the ASA, except just being on the ASA on the Facebook page and things like that. Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Very, very good.
Yes.
And then just take home message as we wrap up here. Some of the things, like just to reiterate or iterate, the most important thing that you want us to take away of how we can help to start changing the culture.
I think really. More diversity and equality in how women and other minorities within medicine, within the ASA, because people do want to be involved. They just have to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, any other comments?
I hope, Desiree, since you've been involved with TopMedTalk and with EBPOM, that our policy of having no manels has played out.
I love that.
No manels. We have no manels.
Love it.
Yeah.
We always try to inject, diversity across, and really not necessarily just across. It's up, all different types of multidisciplinary background people. And
if we get drawn into a manel, we try and say, I'm sorry, you have no women on this now, so I can't accept the invitation. Could my female colleague step in for me?
That's amazing.
Or if you happen to pop up, as happened to me a week ago at the European, I shouldn't name who it was, but a European thing.
The European.
We've agreed that we would apologise for getting drawn inadvertently into a manel. That we should. And it's
that
all
goes
just
a
steps.
long way, but that goes a long way. Yes.
Yeah, that's something that we all try and do for sure. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out and discussing this very, very important topic here at the ASA. We hope we can have further conversations.
Yes,
if there's anything that we can do on TopMedTalk to help promote anything that you guys are working on, just please let us know, because it definitely is a valiant effort.
Really important work.
Very, very important.
As a husband and a father of a daughter, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thanks for listening and watching on TopMedTalk. You can find more content just like this, and this will be up here in just a little bit on the live.ebpom.org site and on our TopMedTalk podcast. You can find all of these great conversations there. And we are on social media, so check us out and tag us. All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
TopMedTalk.
Thanks for downloading TopMedTalk. Don't forget to subscribe via your podcatcher. Don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And also, don't forget, TopMedTalk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that. If you check out ebpom.org, you can find low prices on some of the conferences we're organising around the world. Many of them are virtual and don't even involve you leaving your own home. Check out ebpom.org now.